Hello, fifth grade. I would like to teach you about week 2 and have a lesson using a PowerPoint as a guiding point. This will be available to you to watch as many times as you need to. The course assignment is for week 2, starting on April 27th and running until that Sunday. I'm recording this for you on a Sunday, so it's actually a week from today. Child development is our first unit. Last week we did an introduction about all things FCS. Today is really focusing in on that first learning about why children learn what they do, how children grow and learn, and specifically ways that we study children. The first type of development that I want to focus in on is called physical development. It makes sense to me, and I wanted to share this example with you, that in the picture at the top left, we have a baby that's crawling. And in the bottom, we would agree that somebody's riding a bike, somebody's maybe jogging, and others are making really big steps and walking fast. Which is more likely to take place first? Not very first, like as soon as they come home from the hospital, as soon as they're born. But the picture on the top is more likely to take place, physical development, before they can walk and run. So if a baby were born, and maybe they're in your family, and someone said they were going to allow you to visit within the first week of life, neither of these pictures of physical development would be something that I would expect that 1 week old to be able to do. Instead, we start with smaller skills. When you're learning about physical development, you're going to hear about fine motor skills and gross motor skills. Both pictures show us examples of gross motor or large motor skills. Those words can be switched out in place of each other. When we learn about fine motor skills, we're talking about little tiny muscles in the fingers, the wrist, the ankles, and they might be things like holding a crayon, holding a toy, certain types of throwing, even though an action like throwing, or let's just say throwing, it would use both fine and gross motor skills or large motor skills. Because the way they hold the ball, it would be a fine motor skill. But the actual extension of the arm and the snapping of the ball would take place from a large muscle group in the arm. So we have both. And it makes sense that we do things in a certain order. We start off with the simpler skills, and then we build on them. So I'm sure I'm going to miss a few, but I'm going to give you an example of a natural progression, things that would go in a certain order. That 1 week old baby might start to learn to strengthen their neck muscles. They might eventually learn to roll over, to sit up, to crawl, to hold on to things, to stand, and we call that cruising. So maybe the living room has a table that's at the height of the baby, and they pull up on that table, and they kind of cruise along that table and move. That's an example of physical development. We do things in a certain order. All right, so moving on. So the first one was physical, and it started with P. The second one is intellectual, and that starts with I. We're going to actually spell pies by the time we're done learning about all the different ways that children grow and learn and develop. And then we're going to add a letter on the end called M. I'll explain. So intellectual development. The reason I chose these pictures, a lot of people think of intellectual development as school. and things that you can learn or do in a school. But learning actually takes place intellectually, sometimes, in some ways, before a baby is born. And it also takes place in the first 5 years before a child even goes to any formal school, kindergarten. Now, whether or not a child attends a formal preschool, that is considered schooling, and a lot of parents can still provide a preschool education in their home that is very amazing, that includes all of the understandings of what children need to be exposed to. But I can't stress enough, no matter what type of development that I'm talking about, all of the types of development have their place, and all of them are equally important. Children deserve to have a very positive, a rich experience, a variety of experiences, especially during those first 5 years when their brains are developing. And rich experiences and positive experiences can only add to that and help them to make those connections and form those relationships and those trust bonds, and all good things can happen and stem from that. So it's a very good foundation. Or if you think of a house, if there's a basement, that basement is the foundation of that house. Okay? So if a foundation is there the first 5 years of a child's life, and it's a very strong foundation, what can be built upon it above ground or during their life after age 5 is usually setting them up for success. So that's what we want to do. We really want to value the learning that can take place not only before birth, not only in the first 5 years, but a whole lifespan. Okay, but we know how critical and important it is that we see the value in learning at that early age. So we have a picture here of also in the center a book, because there have been multiple studies and research about children and their brain and how they learn and how they grow. So it's constantly a new, we're finding out more and more about children every time we do research. At one time, we didn't think children were as capable. I shouldn't say we. In the past, in history, probably the very, very, very far back, they didn't believe that children were as intelligent as they are and that they weren't as capable. But I'm here to tell you that they were wrong, and we're proving them wrong all the time. Especially right now, you're proving them wrong by continuing to learn, even though we're in a distance learning and you're used to being in a school, and you're used to your routines, and you're used to the way Mannheim Central works. Okay, well, we're here to prove them wrong and to show them that it doesn't matter if we have a school, we're going to learn anyway. All right, so we had physical development, intellectual development. Now we have emotional development. I have a picture of a baby crying, and then I have a picture of all the emotions that you might be familiar with. Happy, sad, angry, excited, afraid, shy, guilty, tired, and I'm sure we can think of lots more. So our feelings. First thing I want to say about that is our feelings are the way we express ourselves. Okay? So, a child's temperament, personality, emotions that are demonstrated early years, maybe their first experience around others, it can tell you a lot about the child and how they're doing. And some, if you remember the phrase, use your words. Maybe you had an adult in your life that was trying to help you to manage your emotions and your feelings. And they understood and validated you by allowing you to have those feelings, but they decided that they would help you and guide you a little bit by reminding you to use your words. So instead of just making a face, stomping, crying, having a fit, they would say, how are you feeling? Use your words. So maybe if it was a struggle between two children, maybe at preschool, and they were tugging and pulling on the same toy or book, They both wanted the same thing. And maybe neither of them were expressing any words. It was all just a push and pull. Maybe an adult or another person enters the triad or makes it a triad, and there's 3 people there all of a sudden, and they say, use your words. So maybe that helps to say, I had it first. Or, I'm angry when you took that out of my hands. You make me sad for taking my toy. It wasn't your turn yet. Okay, so we could make up scenarios, and I'm sure we've all been in several of them. So the other picture I chose specifically because babies use crying, which is a form of communication. And I don't know what your experiences have been, but I want to say that not everybody knows how to respond to a crying baby. But my hope for you is that you will know just how important a baby's cry is at letting us know what their needs are. Notice I didn't say their wants. Babies do not have the ability to manipulate us to get their own way. The only reason they cry is to get their needs met. So they're communicating to us. Then we have to do the detective work. The more we know that baby, the more we might be able to say, oh, that might be the cry for help. That might be their cry for, I'm hungry. That might be their cry for, my diaper is dirty, I need a clean diaper. That might be their cry for, my finger is stuck. I need help. Maybe I'm bored. All right, but they can't use the words yet, so their cries kind of vary. They kind of sound a little bit different. And when you really get to know the child, you can help to differentiate between one cry and the next. So basically, emotion is expressed at a younger age for babies before they're able to communicate with actual words and to identify emotions. They use crying as a way to let you know what their needs are. And you have to do a little bit of investigating to figure out the real need. But this is how children communicate. As they get older, we hope they do use their words and express their emotions. Sometimes you'll have kids that won't shed a tear, and then you'll have others who are crying more often than you can understand. You know, some are very sensitive, some are not. Some are, extroverts, some are introverts. It's kind of like a personality thing. All of these are ways for children to express themselves. All right, so as we study children, emotional development, which we just figured out or introduced, is very, very similar to social development. And a lot of what we see in examples of how children socialize have to do with communication. So as they learn to communicate, we have examples on the screen like friendship, taking turns, playing games, collaborating. What I don't have on the screen is a kid by themselves, because that's the opposite of being social. In this time in our lives, we talk a lot about social distancing. That can be very, very hard for children. It's hard for adults. We are social creatures. As children, we can learn a lot about our world through play. We can learn about a lot through interactions with other people and relationships. And so, forming friendships, as we get older, we can have more and more experiences where we can have friends. Learning to take turns takes a lot of practice. We have to have a lot of grace and understanding and patience with ourselves and others when it comes to helping children to take turns. And one of the ways that I always say is by modeling that behavior. If you expect a child to share, you have to share. And they have to see that, and they might have to see it many, many times before it becomes a practice of their own. And they decide to share with others.